I mean, do you want to talk about the Dark Crystal today? Yeah. Beyond that, let's leave it aside.
Well, I was about to go into Final Fantasy, but
Oh,
fine.
I don't mind either way. I mean, I haven't finished the Final Fantasy VII remake yet.
If there's one person I want to hear talk about the ending of that game, it's you.
I don't know what the ending is. I've heard things, not about what it contains, but what it suggests. Going
Well, I'm
forward.
very happy. That's all I'll say. I'm very happy.
Most of the people I've spoken to are happy. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's caused some backlash. I'm sure. Well, that's inevitable. There's going to be, isn't there?
Oh God, yeah. But I think for the most, I've been sitting on my hands for the last couple of days, going okay, I finished it now. One, I want to go back and play it again. And two, I want to talk to someone about the end of this fucking game.
Well, I'm gonna get well into it very soon. I mean, the reason I think I haven't done it yet, it's been sitting here on my desk for a long, long time. I think the reason I haven't done it is partially it's time. There's lots of stuff going on at the moment, lots of things sort of pulling which way or another. But another reason is genuine apprehension. Because I just don't. I mean, I loved the demo. The demo I was really surprised by. I was surprised by how much I loved playing that demo, and just being in the world again, just being with these characters.
It's a strange experience returning.
Yeah,
a very, very positive one. But
yeah, but from what I've played thus far, I'm really enjoying it. Really enjoying it. The changes that have been made are very positive. I like the just slight extenuations of the characters, which don't feel out of place at all. So Jesse is a little bit more flirty. You've got Barrett being a little bit more of a demagogue this time round.
I like that take at him.
I like it too.
When you think about it, he's in charge of a terrorist cell.
Yeah, right.
He can't just be the shouty, shooty guy that just never gets anything right. There has to be something to draw him to this extremist viewpoint and draw others to him.
Right, he needs to have some sort of eloquence, doesn't he? People have to be stirred by him because he is kind of. I mean, I know there's a whole other thing with Avalanche in the remake, isn't there? It's like a wider network, isn't it?
They don't delve into it much, but it does get brought up that Barrett's group is not necessarily representative of the whole group.
Interesting. Very interesting. Because in the original game, of course, Avalanche is just that small group and that's it. But it makes sense. It does make sense. I mean, one of the things that even I'm not very far into it at all, at all. But one of the things that's very clear is that they've just extenuated wildly. So Midgar before was sort of a metaphorical city, It marketed itself as a city, but because of technical limitations, you can't get the sense of a city from it. It's very confined to very particular areas, and there aren't many people in those areas as such. Now it feels like a living, breathing city. It feels kind of real. It feels like an urban environment.
A lot of talking, an almost astounding amount of talking.
Yeah, lots going on.
The amount of NPC dialogue, I've never seen anything like it.
Right, and I love that. I mean, for me, that's gravy. I like that in my RPGs in general.
Oh yeah. Well, suddenly it turns into people watching.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is just sincere world building, isn't it? Just sheer world building. I love that in any form of RPG and in any form of fantastical media, to be honest. Just give me all of that.
And sincere, I think, is the key word for that game. It is very sincere.
Yeah, and it for me, it does feel like a labour of love. It does feel like something that it knows what the original game means, That was my most sincere fear about it, that it would be synthetic, that it would just be a cash grab on Square Enix's part. But that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be something that acknowledges that not just the game itself and its subject, but the phenomena of it. I mean, this game is epoch making. When the original dropped, it was unlike anything, wasn't it? I mean, for our generation, who were teenagers at the time, who were sort of experiencing adolescence at the same time that the medium of games was experiencing its own adolescence. It was unlike anything. Everything came together and worked. There was a weird kind of alchemy about it that made it just an event.
I would say Final Fantasy VII was a huge formative element of both what I expect from video games and what I expect from fiction.
Yeah,
and
likewise.
the kind of fiction I consume. Like, I don't think I'd be as into some things as I am if it wasn't for that game. And it's very strange to try to explain to people today the idea of a truly epoch-making game, because while like you've got wonderful games like God of War and you've got Doom and you've got all these different styles of game, but they are not. God of War is not epoch-making. It doesn't. No. It's a fantastic game, and I adore it. I love the story for that game, but the world is not the gaming world is not different because it exists.
Yeah, I know.
And the player is not different because it exists.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? This game, the original Final Fantasy VII, for a certain subset of humanity at that time, it shaped the nature of our imaginations, didn't it? It kind of got inside of us, and I think a part of it is because, of course, we would have grown up with the medium of video games, so we'd never really seen anything like this before.
But it's also like when we were growing up with video games, it was the idea, especially if you weren't like for our thing, the only one I had access to was a Mega Drive.
Right.
So you had Sonic and Shinobi and stuff like that. The idea of something with that much focus on a narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they did exist before, obviously, but they were not quite the same. They were much more sincerely video games than this is. Even the other RPGs, even the other SquareSoft RPGs. So the previous,
the other Final Fantasy.
Yeah, the previous Final Fantasy games.
People push 6 forward as an amazing game, and it's a great game. But narratively, it's very typical of its time.
Yeah, absolutely. And is still very much prone to being a video game. It has very video gamey elements, which, to be fair, Final Fantasy VII does as well, but not to the same degree. Final Fantasy VII is more sincerely a piece of narrative fiction, and it just wants you to immerse yourself in that world. I will never ever forget certain things, certain experiences, like when you step out of Midgar for the first time. And that world opens up to you, and you realise that this thing is huge. You've spent so many hours in this city, and suddenly the world is open to you. And there's that wonderful map music that you hear for the first time. It was something new. It was something we'd never really experienced before. Certainly I'd never experienced. And I remember being moved by it.
I'd say few things have me as Steins Gate is the only thing I'd say that had me as emotionally invested at any stage. Yeah. And Steins Gate was this random thing I stumbled on, this Japanese visual novel that I was just like, oh, they did stuff about this, and then that thing just emotionally destroyed me.
Yeah.
It's if you haven't seen either, you could see the show, but like the actual novel game inverted commas is an experience.
Right.
That's like they've redone it with like all animated cutscenes. It was like just the static images. Yeah. And they've redone the entire the 60, 70 hours of it.
Right.
With full animation now. But it was, and also it's about like the Hadron Collider. And while you can't trust CERN, but like it's that is the only thing in 20-something years that's ever pushed itself ahead of Final Fantasy VII.
Right, I mean...
And now Final Fantasy VII has again pushed that back a step. Right, because I think the new one is just so emotionally resonant, it has surpassed both the original and Steins Gate. Even though it's very strange for me to be rating the new one, because it's a story I'm like, but it's not done.
Yeah, right. It's the opening chapter, of course, isn't it? The opening chapter. But yeah, I mean, for me, before Final Fantasy VII hit, I tended to be more moved by traditional media. So it would have been novels, it would have been short stories, it would have been things like that. I mean, one of the few things I can identify. I mean, when I was very young, it would have been things like The Lord of the Rings. That made a massive impact on me. I was like a diehard Tolkienite when I was very young, and then I think you tend to grow out of that, if you're still exposing yourself to literature, if you're reading a bit wider, you start to grow out of that. So I came across Clive Barker's fantasy and Neil Gaiman's fantasy, which is several shades removed. Obviously, it's that melding of the very real and the very fantastical, and started to branch out into science fiction. So people like Philip K. Dick, like Harlan Ellison, and Ursula K. Le Guin, and that kind of thing. That kind of thing tended to have a massive impact on me when I was very young. So I read like Weave World when I was 11. that completely shattered the nature of my imagination into little bits, and then pieced it back together into some new configuration. Same with things like Tales of Earthsea, The Lathe of Heaven, Flow My Tears, the Policeman Said, that kind of thing. I mean, I think when you're that young, when you're in that formative stage, and you're not your imagination, your personality, all of it's in flux. All of it is, it's still trying to realize its own shape and its own nature. All of that stuff is so significant. Everything you're exposed to becomes absorbed into that. And I think Final Fantasy VII hit at just the right moment. Just the right moment. And the fact that it was a video game, that it was was immersive, and we hadn't experienced it before. I mean, I remember going nuts. About it. I mean, I think I was 14 when Final Fantasy hit. I would have been something like that, 13, 14 when I first played it.
I was 12 or 13. 12.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Because I remember I didn't have a copy of for my own for a year, so I used to borrow from someone at school. And I say borrow, I used to disappear with it for months on end.
Yeah, borrow in inverted commas, yeah. And I just absorbed in it. I would spend hours just in the world, not really doing very much, just wandering around, just encountering things and seeing what I could find and whatnot. And I think that it appeals to a very particular sensibility, doesn't it? That person, that child who is imaginative, who is into other worlds, other realities, who's into their science fiction, their fantasy, who lives in their own dream world a lot of the time anyway.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it.
It does seem to be a thing. I mean, and also, I mean, what's very difficult to explain to people now, particularly younger people, younger gamers perhaps, is that before Final Fantasy VII, RPGs were not cool.
Oh God, no, not like they were. The gaming in general had just come out of the quagmire of if you touch a video game, you'll die alone.
Right, yeah.
And that was like, okay, you can do a platformer, you can do a sport game, and then, well, I want to immerse myself in a story, and it's just like, oh God, play your D&D, nerd.
Right, yeah, it was the exclusive preserve of Anorax, wasn't it?
Oh,
and,
God, yes.
You know, stuff like JRPGs, of course, they did exist. They did start to filter through, certainly on the Super Nintendo and whatnot. You did get a few of them, but they were very rare in the UK. Very rare. Even a lot of those that were published in the wider Western world, in Europe and in the US, did not get released here. There was just a very, very little market for them.
And there was the idea of a game coming out and not getting it on the other side of the world for 6 to 8 months as well.
Right, yes.
While we wait for localization at the time. It's very difficult to communicate that.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And they were just not as valid a subgenre of video games. They were just not valid on a commercial level because they just didn't sell. Not very well, anyway. But that started to change towards the end of the Super NES era. Just started to change with the likes of Chrono Trigger and the Western Secret of Mana, or Seiken Densetsu, as it was called which was, of course, the third game in that series in Japan. So just all over the place. You started to get more filtering through, and you started to get people realizing that video games could be sources of inspiration. They could actually be storytelling mediums. I mean, what was the first RPG you ever played?
Oh, God, the first RPG I ever played. That's going back a long time,
right?
I played something on the Mega Drive. I remember that. I don't remember what it was, but I remember playing something on the Mega Drive.
Yeah, there were a couple.
Because I'd want to play it, and my cousin would be there, and he'd say, "No, we're not playing that."
Oh, yeah, right.
That's what I remember. But because I never did Zelda or anything much like that. In fact, I've never really liked Zelda.
Yeah, Zelda's an interesting one because it's kind of the proto-RPG.
And for me, it's never really narratively evolved beyond that.
There's not much in the way of narrative in most of the Zelda games. I mean, there's a couple I really, really love. I love Wind Waker. I loved Wind Waker on the GameCube. I thought that was absolutely beautiful. And the more recent one, Breath of the Wild, that's a stunner. That's a stone cold stunner, that is. Again, just pure world building. Almost all of the story is told environmentally, which is just great. I love that. I love that to bits in video games. But by and large, no, they are very light RPGs. In fact, when you look at the ones that really brought them to the fore, like A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo,
Yeah.
it's not really an RPG as such because it doesn't have a story. It's just like it's a map overworld linking lots of dungeons together. That's pretty much it. That's how it works, you know? And the story is just bog basic. It is just get all the treasures, defeat all the bosses, then defeat the big evil boss at the end.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. I'd say Final Fantasy VII was probably the first major RPG I can remember playing.
Right, really? So it was kind of...
Trial by fire.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think before that, like, when I got the PlayStation, I think I was, like, playing Tekken and Crash Bandicoot for the most part.
Yeah, right.
But the interesting thing for me in Final Fantasy is I guarantee you that's why I can't stand the silent protagonist. Or the wide sweeping, like, stuff like Fallout. Like, after about a couple of days of playing, I start losing patience. Because I've said this before, I'm no interest in telling my story.
Yeah, right.
I want to know their story, because I want to know someone else's story, because I can tell my own story. I can just sit here, draw it on a piece of paper, but wandering from point to point, going like, and then those really pointed, quiet bits.
So you want a character, you want a protagonist, as opposed to someone that you can sort of impose your own.
Yeah, I have this urge to, even if, like, people say, oh, you want someone you like. No, it's someone I can invest in. You can invest in someone terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, there's amazing games with atrocious protagonists, but...
Yeah, I mean, arguably many, especially if you play first-person shooters, you know, most of the protagonists are awful people.
Everyone needs to die.
Pretty much, yeah. But no, I think in terms of like pure RPG, the first one I ever played was it was when Square was Squaresoft, so quite a while ago. Towards the end of the Super Nintendo's life, there was a sort of sister game to The Secret of Mana produced by Square US called The Secret of Evermore.
I've heard of that.
The Secret of Evermore, it was released almost exclusively in Western markets, interestingly. I don't think it ever got a release in Japan. And it uses the mechanics of The Secret of Mana. It all looks like Secret of Mana with slightly updated graphics, but it's got a slightly more westernized, slightly dirtier, grittier, more real feeling about it. And it also benefits from being produced and released in the West in the sense that a lot of the cultural touch points that a lot of Japanese RPGs have that make no sense to a Western eye aren't really there. It's much more westernized in terms of its narrative and its dialogue and whatnot, which helps a great deal in that regard. It's a very, very good RPG, but that was the first one I ever played where it just really hit home that, okay, you can have characters, you can have stories, you can actually have worlds that make sense in video games. And I spent hours on that game. Hours, and of course, you know, this was way before. I think this was pre-teens when I picked this up. I may have been like 10 or 11 when I got it. And it just completely consumed me for a brief period. You know, it consumed my life and informed so much of the way my imagination was working. You know, you'd have dreams about it, you'd have daydreams about it, idle little games, you know, which would be set in that world or in places within that world. I found it beautiful. I found it genuinely beautiful. And then after that, of course, we never got it, but there was things like Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger, which was an epoch-making game, so good that it has survived to this point, you know? The first time I played Chrono Trigger was well after Final Fantasy. The first game I played on the PC, which, you know, technically should have been some big updated game like Half-Life. No, it was Chrono Trigger. It was the first thing I did was I hesitate to incriminate myself, but downloaded an emulator and
no, none of that.
And play Chrono Trigger. Yeah, no. I mean, what I mean is bought a copy and
internationally.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. But I played Chrono Trigger on the PC, and that I loved it.
Fascinated that hadn't had a fresh release.
Right. It's insane. It's insane that they haven't continued that, because if there was any other franchise that Squaresoft had hold of that is, I wouldn't say as beloved as Final Fantasy, but is nearing that. Chrono Trigger is it.
It's a strange thing. I was thinking that a few days ago. Like, I was just... When you see what some of the games that are on, like, the PSN for the re-releases and the remasters and things, that no one's done Chrono Trigger is bizarre to me. Even, like, on any of the consoles. Or any of the formats. Like,
I think
it's so right.
There was a very, very, very small re-release of Chrono Trigger. I don't think it ever came to the UK, but on possibly the Game Boy Advance or something like that. There was one re-release, like really obscure, very poorly marketed, and that was it. That was it. It so deserves more. It's so... I mean, obviously, I played Chrono Trigger after Final Fantasy VII. So for it to, a SNES era RPG that was pre-Final Fantasy VII to make that impact, that I would play it all the way through and just adore it to bits. That's some good writing there. I mean, really, Chrono Trigger, you can see that it's building towards Final Fantasy VII. You can actually see elements of Chrono Trigger in Final Fantasy VII. Even down to the antagonist, who is, kind of tall, long-haired, silver hair, slightly dour, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that. It's amazing that it's so good that it's still very playable to this day.
I'm going to have to go back and play that now.
Chrono Trigger, yeah, I mean, highly recommended. Highly recommended.
I played a bit of it when I got a PC, but God, it's been years since I sat down to anything like that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. The thing is, because it is an old-fashioned RPG, it has certain elements whereby it requires you to grind. It requires you to put a lot of time and effort into it. And I think not only has video gaming moved on since that, but we've moved on. We are different people now, and very often that kind of immersive video game, we need a bit more. We maybe need a little bit more from it. What I do like doing is watching other people play it who've never played it before and realise what a stunning piece of work it actually is. So certain Let's Players, for example, on YouTube and whatnot, I love watching them play it. I love watching them play it. And of course, that sort of thing, that kind of top-down, very bog-basic RPG, has had something of a renaissance recently.
It has, well, like a lot of like the classic video games and stuff are having a bit of a renaissance. Side-scrolling and everything else is coming back.
Castlevania-style games,
I just finished Bloodstained there a couple of weeks back.
And I finished Blasphemous a little while back as well. I mean, that's stunner. But again, a Metroidvania. It's Castlevania, basically.
But I think it's because like now you have so many mediums for independent gamers, and not just the AAAs anymore. Like you can fund it on Kickstarter, you can get Patreon, you can go on the just independent network development and release anything you want.
And of course, the tools are readily available as well now. It's much easier to get the software that you need to do these things. I mean, one of the reasons indie sort of top-down SNES-style RPGs had a bit of a renaissance is because of RPG Maker. And that's what it's designed to do.
I remember that.
Yeah. Well, there are still people making games on it. In fact, there was very recently a kind of efflorescence of horror video games produced on it, believe it or not. And they're good.
I heard about that. I haven't played any, but I heard about that.
They're good. They're actually really good. There's one called The Witch's House, which is genuinely terrifying. That's some good game design. If you can make that sort of, that slightly cutesy top-down style RPG genuinely frightening, then good on you. Good on you. Some of them are really weird as well. Some of them are they go for Disturbia more than outright shocks and scares, and that works very, very well. Very well indeed.
I've always preferred that as a form of horror anyway.
Yeah, likewise. Give me that any day of the week. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, one of the things that it does seem to be the era of remakes, doesn't it? Like the mid to late 1990s in video gaming is having a bit of a renaissance.
The nostalgia cycle's hitting.
Yep. That's exactly it.
That's the 30-year nostalgia cycle.
Yep, that's exactly it. So we've had like the remake of Resident Evil 2 and 3, both of which were absolutely stunning. They were stunning, you know? And they are, I mean, as horror goes, I love them to bits, I really do, but they are the B-movie style horror.
Oh god, yes.
You know, it's all about schlock and gore and shocks and that kind of thing. And it works very well. They're masterclasses in that kind of horror. But given the choice, give me Silent Hill or something to that effect any day of the week.
Yeah, what Resident Evil evolved into was just kind of... in some ways, it probably set the bar for a lot of actual B-movie horror as it was applied to actual films. But
it wouldn't surprise me in the least. Yeah, so you've got a sort of feedback loop occurring, because of course the original Resident Evil was designed to feel like a horror film that you play. I mean, even the script, such as it is, was written in the style of a horror film as opposed to a horror video game. That was the point of it. The fact that it is now influencing horror films and horror literature, it's this strange, bizarre, sort of slightly incestuous feedback loop that's going on. But
well, speaking of feedback loops, we better get into bloody Dark Crystal. Are you and I
are we going to do Dark Crystal? Okay, let's do Dark Crystal, because I thought
that's the problem when we get together. It's how it always happens.
Right. I mean, I've recorded all of this, so that's a good start to the conversation, you know. And as the listeners out there know, I very rarely do introductions. I just tend, with all the people I speak to, we just start talking and stuff happens, you know. Oh,
you're a rambler.
A rambler, absolutely. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. But yes, I mean, nominally this will be about the Dark Crystal. So, but yeah, oh my God, the Age of Resistance, yeah.
The Age of Resistance.
Ooh, I mean, the people who listen to my channel regularly know I've spoken about this before in various different videos. I went nuts for this show. I actually went slightly over the edge for this show. It's become, amongst a rare few, it's become part of my personal canon, you know? It's one of those shows where if there's nothing else, if I really want to feel good, if I need some positive input, I can go and watch it, and I know if I start, I will watch it from beginning to end, and I will love every moment. Every moment.
It's a unique experience as a TV show.
Yeah.
What's like I came into it in a weird way, because last time I'd seen Dark Crystal before I started watching this was about 20 years ago.
So ages ago, so.
Yeah, and I had a lot of memories.
Yeah.
A lot of memories were like, I was scared it made me, how well the world was built, how good all the characters were, everything else. So I saw Age of Resistance without rewatching the original, and then afterward I rewatched the original, and that was bizarre.
Yeah.
That was a bizarre effect, because the world is gorgeous.
Yep.
Absolutely stunning. I can't say the plot holds up.
No, it's the original has a very particular ethos about it, doesn't it? I could see really what they were trying to do, and in technical terms, it's absolutely gorgeous. It is absolutely amazing. The atmosphere is wonderful. The Skeksis have always been some of my favourite Jim Henson puppets ever. I think they are, in terms of their design, the sort of what they feel like when they're on screen, the characterization of them, the way they move, the way they express. I've always loved them. But it does feel like the original film, funnily enough, does feel like it's the plot of a TV show, something that could have been extended out to develop it a bit further, crammed down into like an hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah, no, or like, it's like a finale movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like, even if you kept the format as it is, it's, okay, this is the end of a story that you've been watching for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's almost in media res, isn't it? So it's like it drops you into the last chapter of a story that's already happened.
Yeah, well, it's designed to be that, isn't it? Like, the whole function of the original Dark Crystal is that you are coming at the end of Thrall's story.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the beginning of the new one.
Not called Thrall at that point, not called anything.
No.
It doesn't have a name at that point. It just drops you into the world, and that's about it. Yeah. But it's a strange one. So I mean, I do have a lot of affection for it. It kind of comes in that same canon of films as, say, Labyrinth and one or two others from the same era, where there were lots of sort of fantasy films in the 1980s. Fantasy was like enjoying a kind of renaissance at that period.
Very particular type of renaissance, like you were getting a lot more leaning into the darker aspects.
Definitely more ambiguity. There was a lot more ambiguity. There was a lot more of fantasy that was married to reality. So fantasy that acknowledges its own fantastical nature or its own imagined nature. I mean, you look at Labyrinth, and that's exactly what it is. You know, it's a dreamscape. It's a psychoscape. It's acknowledging fantasy as a way of working through particular issues and particular problems. That's exactly what it is. The Dark Crystal's unusual in that regard because it's not. It doesn't have a human element. There's no sort of human touchstone. It's an entirely alien world with entirely alien creatures, and in that regard, it kind of distinguishes itself.
Well, it's like people used to say they were always. I've seen interviews and they've said like they were always a little nervous about releasing it, and it was one of the hardest things to push because people were going like, "Well, where's the touchstone?" And just like the Gelflings are the touchstone, and just like they're little elf people. They're not what we're looking for. And you know, when you look at some of the background behind the original movie and the things they were planning to do and hoping to do that they kind of had to pull back on.
Yeah.
Which, oddly enough, a lot ended up in Age of Resistance.
I can imagine a lot of that stuff ended up in an Age of Resistance, ultimately. But it did make its mark. It did make its mark because it is something that people remember. What I find is that people who watched it when they were children remember particular images and impressions.
I remember the, whatchamacallit, the Striders, the Land Striders.
Ah, the Land Strider
I remember the Land Strider fight. That freaked me out when I was a child.
Yeah.
When the Land Striders were being killed, like I had nightmares for weeks.
I can imagine. I can see why, because it is. I mean, they're animals, so they're the creatures that you've developed an emotional connection with, and then ultimately they end up being killed. By these awful things. The Garthim. I remember the Garthim very much.
Oh yeah.
The emergence of them when they first appear, they're really genuinely creepy. There is something very, very disturbing about them, even when you rewatch it now. I don't know whether it's like the movement or the silhouette of them. They don't look quite right. There's something off-kilter about them, and it works very much in their favour. It makes them genuinely frightening and scary.
I'd agree with that. Which is, and then you add in what Age of Resistance brings in for their entire origin. It was dark.
I loved it. Loved it.
People keep on telling me this is a kid's show, and I was just like, this is a kid's show like Batman was a kid's show.
Exactly.
And that, our Gargoyles was a kid's show, or the Plague Dogs was a kid's film. Which is, like, I saw Dark Crystal. I rarely tell people this, but there was a video van. Remember those? It was a van that used to go around to the country places where people weren't able to go out too much, and said like, right, we'll have all these films, whatever. Yeah. And our one was run by an animation buff.
Right, okay.
So she loved cartoons and she loved all sorts of animation, and she used to collect like what she saw as historically significant animation films. Right. So she had Land Before Time, she had American Tail, and then she had all these incredibly violent, dark, mature. She had Warship Down, she had Plague Dogs, she had a ton of films that if my mother ever knew what they were before I rented them, because she always used to say, "I'm keeping these back for you, Mike," because she knew I was like mad for them, and I used to watch them, get freaked out, give them back, and go like, right, next one, like so, and Dark Crystal was
blows,
in there,
that kind of thing,
I think I got away with Warship Down because my dad was a big fan of Art Garfunkel.
Right, so you kind of got away with it.
Yeah, so anytime he came in, it's Bright Eyes, Dad. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Never mind the rabbits massacring one another.
Yeah, that rabbit dying? Yes.
That's,
Like, again, original Land Before Time. Jesus, that movie terrified me.
Wow, I mean...
Also how I saw E.T., which is a weird thing because E.T. did not survive my childhood. I kind of disliked that movie.
It's not my favourite either, I have to say. I know a lot of people from our era, who were children alongside us, absolutely adore that film. It's not my type.
Now, he freaked me out in a way, like the puppet for him freaked me out, and not in a way that was intended.
Right.
It just seemed wrong.
Yeah.
Like, no.
There's another film of the same era that is kind of similar, The Flight of the Navigator.
Oh, God.
I always preferred that.
I haven't seen that in a long, long time.
I always preferred that one for some reason. I don't know why. That one always felt more... I mean, I was a bit of a science fiction buff already by that point, you know? So I think maybe that's why. Because Flight of the Navigator feels a bit more like sincere science fiction. Whereas E.T. is slightly more of a kind of schmaltzy family film.
Yeah. I have to admit, one of the earliest things I remember saying about E.T. is E.T. fuck off home.
Yeah. Not my favourite Spielberg, not by a long chalk.
No, I feel like mine might be a little obvious, but...
yeah, of course it would be Close Encounters of the Third Kind, wouldn't it, Mike?
Of course, fantastic film.
That's got to be what it is.
It's actually War of the Worlds. No.
Really? Off of my podcast. Off of my podcast, sir. You are ejected.
But Tom Cruise.
Yeah, Tom Cruise.
They gotta kill him. They gotta fight him.
Standing with his mouth open, looking into the middle distance for the entire film.
Yeah.
His entire repertoire in that film. That's how. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, and you know, I went to see that with my mother because we're both like War of the Worlds fans. We like the Jeff Wayne musical version and the book, you know. And I remember, I don't do this at the cinema because I'm a bit nasty at the cinema. I don't like people making noise or anything like that. I will be quite unpleasant. But you know, at the end of that film, when it shows you the boy and he's alive.
Oh God!
I remember in the cinema just saying, "Oh, fuck off!"
Oh dear! And a round of applause followed.
Yeah, just seething about it, just like seething about it all the way home. Just
quite shit.
Yeah,
quite shit.
Anyway, Dark Crystal. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that.
Like, I don't know. Like, how were you? We were talking about Final Fantasy there, and you said you're trepidatious about the new game.
Yep.
Because of the investment. Because I know, like the world building and everything else in Dark Crystal, the original sets expectations.
Yep.
Were you excited for this? Were you not?
Well, when I first saw it announced, I was really excited. I mean, very excited indeed. Because I think one of the things I've always felt about the original Dark Crystal, and I felt this since I was a kid, is that I love the world, I love the creatures, I love the lore of it, but it doesn't do enough with it. I wanted to see more of it, and lo and behold, what do you get? Well, a TV series which is going to do exactly that. I was very trepidatious about it, I will fully admit, because there's every chance that this could have just been a cashing in on nostalgia. Every chance. But the more I heard about it, the more I realised that they were going to be using practical effects, they were going to be using puppets, it was going to be a Jim Henson production. I followed it very closely. I was watching interviews with the creators, and they were talking about like, some of these people were kids when the Dark Crystal came out, so they were fans. The excitement really started to build, and the more I saw of it, the more trailers they released, it started to send shivers up my spine. You know when you get that almost sense of precognition about something. And you know it's going to be good. You just know. Maybe there's a little bit of bias in there, because you want it to be so good. That's just what you tell yourself. It's what your brain does. It's like, nope, it's going to be good. It's just going to be good. Don't question it. Leave it alone. That's what happened, I think. And I just found myself overwhelmed with excitement for it.
Yeah, I hadn't seen something with practical effects, and I don't know how long, and I have a large bug in my hat about the lack of practical effects in science fiction at the moment.
Yeah.
I get so frustrated when I see something like The Avengers was all filmed on the green screen. Why are we proud of that?
Yeah.
Why is this
a
success?
Hobbit.
Oh! Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I have a thing about The Hobbit, because The Lord of the Rings has amazing practical effects.
Yep, certainly did.
And then The Hobbit, and then what Peter Jackson, and just that man was doing so well for himself.
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Stop it, Mikey. It wasn't 20 years ago. Stop it. I will not have
years
it. I will not have it. 20 years? I can't. No, I can't. My brain can't actually handle that.
No, it doesn't seem that long. It really doesn't.
Oh, I'm having
yeah.
flashbacks to sitting talking to my history teacher about the Lord of the Rings.
I remember getting the books entirely because someone wanted me to see the film. And they said, I want you to know the story first. Right. I read that book a lot.
Yeah.
Destroyed the poor thing, actually. It had no covers by the end.
Yeah.
But, well, that's a sign of a good book.
Absolutely.
People say, "Oh, I'll keep it pristine." That's not necessarily a sign that you love it.
Not at all. No, I mean,
if that book is like battered and there's chipped pages and it's yellowed everywhere, it's like it's lived a life.
As an aside, as someone who just adores books and fiction in general, who lives them basically, give me. I love second-hand and third-hand books. I like books that are slightly creased and feel like they've got history. You know, so someone else. Yeah. Really? Someone else has read these things. Someone else is obsessed over them, has escaped into them. There's something saturated into them. There's an essence saturated into them. I love that. Give me all of that.
I like tying it back to Dark Crystal. Dark Crystal's actually got a lot of ties to the books because one of the advisors and one of the writers was the guy who's been writing the books for years. So loads of his characters and loads of his ideas came in because they just said these are great. Like Tavra, apparently there's a completely parallel story for her in the books.
Okay, I did not know that. Yeah. I did not know. So the books that span off from the original film, yeah.
It actually caused a small bit of controversy because in the books, she is in a relationship with, what is her name? Annika?
Oh, okay.
And that's not brought in here. Like, a lot of people were praising how there's the Deet's parents are both men, and they don't. And one of the things people liked about it that it's just normalized. No one makes a comment on it because it's just normal because it's normal. But I was chatting to someone who said that once they were really happy with that until they read that Tavra had a girlfriend, and that was an established character in the series. Because I think, like, what little I've read of the books, because I haven't sat down to the books, but from what I understand, she's there when Tavra dies.
Oh!
I think.
Okay, now that is interesting.
Considering what Tavra is when she dies, that's a fascinating idea. Who are you dating in that case?
Right, yeah, God almighty.
You know what really surprised me about this?
What's that?
The voice cast. Like, this... Basically, the day I saw this first episode, I said, "Oh, look who's playing these." And the second I saw Simon Pegg's name, I had to walk away.
Yeah,
because I could hear Mark Hamill, I could hear Benedict Wong, but if you told me Simon Pegg was voicing the Chamberlain, I would have laughed at you as just Simon Pegg should be a professional voice actor.
It's perfect, isn't it? It is goddamn it perfect. You cannot hear him in that voice.
No, it's amazing to me. And I saw the behind the scenes because everyone has it. And you see him performing and it's just like, how are you doing this?
Yeah, it's amazing.
You're Simon Pegg. You're like the most recognizable voice in British sci-fi nerddom.
And suddenly this other voice is coming out of his mouth.
Yeah, he really should consider a career in voice acting.
Yeah, because he's good. In fact, the whole cast for Age of Resistance were just beautiful.
No, there's not a bum note in my opinion.
Yeah, Jason Isaacs as Skeksis, the Emperor.
Yeah, like Jason Isaac, I thought did fantastically. Especially, the last time we saw the Emperor, he's a rotting corpse.
Right.
But I think Mark Hamill, unfortunately, I think gets kind of pigeonholed with his performances sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, so it's the Joker voice, isn't it? Yeah, that's what he tends to do.
Yeah, but I think he brought a very nice, because he couldn't do the variety in the voice, but he did the turn, the delivery, and everything else.
Yeah, I love the scientist, love him to bits. In fact, he's one of my favourite Skeksis in this, and I love the way he's a really good example of how what they've done is taken elements like visual cues from the original film and used them as little storytelling elements. So why does he have a cybernetic eye? Where does it come from? Well, you find out. In one of the nastiest scenes in the whole show.
Oh my god! I want to see. We didn't see much of the Mystics, but I want to see his Mystic.
Oh my god! Yeah, now that would be fun.
Because obviously they didn't really deal with this a lot in the first movie, but he's replaced some of his arms by the end of it, and I want to see what that's like.
So what happens to him? Yeah, what does he experience that
Yeah.
requires that? But yeah, that's another thing that would be really fun actually, which is something they can do in like seasons to come. It's exploring more of the relationship between the Mystics and the Skeksis.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, they touch on it here with the Heretic and the Wanderer.
That was brilliant. The Wanderer, yeah.
The Heretic, I think, was a great idea. Not because like, oh, good guy of the bad guys, which we all love.
Yeah.
But one of the ideas behind, for anyone who doesn't know who's listening to this, one of the ideas behind the Skeksis and the Mystics is that they're the Urskek split in half. And by the way, I still don't like the Urskek design. I really wish
the original Urskek design.
I kind of wish it was representative of because they have commonalities in their design.
Yeah.
So I kind of wish the Urskeks kind of they look too human.
Yeah.
But the Skeksis are representing sort of the unbridled passion, creativity, hedonism of life. Yeah. And the Mystics are the slow, methodical wisdom and everything else. Neither of those are good and evil.
Yeah, that is something I'm so glad you brought up, because it's something that it does exist to a certain degree in the original film, but it's way more pronounced in Age of Resistance. Way more pronounced. I mean, yes, the Skeksis they incorporate all of the negative aspects of what were the Urskeks. That's undoubtedly true. So, lust, desire, unfettered hedonism, self-interest, the desire for dominance and power. But they are everything else as well.
Because the backstory is that originally they were defenders. They are society. They were, even after the split, even after the crystals cracked, they are positive influences of the world. But unfettered hedonism, turns into unfettered selfishness.
Absolutely, yeah, and that it seems to be driven by that anxiety about immortality, doesn't it? They have a thing about death, the Skeksis, which is really pronounced in this show, actually, much more than I thought it was going to be.
I really like it because what would drive them to this kind of upheaval of their entire society? It's the day they realize they could die.
That's it. That is exactly it. They have a kind of a fanatic drive about them, which is that they are terrified of death. The notion of oblivion terrifies them. Absolutely terrifies them. And you get ruminations on that, which I really like. So I don't know whether it's the Wanderer or the Heretic. They ask at one point, what happens to us when we die? Because we're not one soul anymore. Will we find one another? Yeah,
they're interesting in how they approach it, because they, unlike anyone else in this, the separation for them is torture.
Yeah.
And I think that was a very interesting angle to take.
Yeah, I liked that a lot. I mean, does it mean that ultimately the Skeksis are in a kind of spiritual pain all the time? And it does seem to be that way. I mean, they're certainly in a lot of physical pain. These creatures look like they are tortured, which I like. I like that a lot about the Skeksis.
But I also like that the Mystics are not wholly positive.
Right.
Mystics could have been involved in this like the Archer being as involved as he is bizarre.
It's aberrant, isn't it?
It's not, and his is the aberrant Skeksis as well.
Of course.
The one that stayed fit and healthy and violent and destructive.
The Hunter. He was very brilliant new element. I loved him.
But because again, like, I've done a lot of background reading since, and the idea that the Skeksis, when they first arrived, were more like the Hunter than they were like what they are now.
Yeah, so they were dynamic, and I mean, you do get that impression, don't you? That the fact that they were threatening at once upon a time, they were really powerful, and still are to a certain degree.
Well, just on the sheer basis of size, they dwarf everything else in the world.
Right.
Like, and that moment where it's like they turn on the guards, or the guards turn on them. And they're not bothered by the fact they have to fight. They were excited by it. The most physically inept of them is excited by the idea of having a fight. Right,
so they are powerful creatures. You may not think it looking at them, but they are. Especially the Emperor, it seems. The Emperor has a lot going on.
The Emperor's I like that he seems to be the most afraid.
Yeah. The one who's most terrified of death. And of course, it's ironic because he's perpetuating his own decay, isn't it?
Which, I love the fact, I love that idea that he's so terrified he's actually set himself up for a fall.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I love the idea of these power figures who are both so afraid of being undermined and have this one major personality flaw that they are ultimately causing their own fall.
Yeah.
And the Emperor everything he does is contributing to the world he's trying to avoid.
Yeah, it's emblematic, isn't it? It's the irony, it's the narrative irony. Yeah, he is perpetuating his own ultimate decay. And that's wonderful. And I love the fact you get to see it so visually as well. I mean, another thing that really struck me about the show is it's gross.
Oh, when he's doing that fingernails. Or he takes off the artificial beak.
And he hasn't got like a nose underneath. You know what that recalls? That actually recalls things like the Libertine, the Earl of Rochester, whose nose fell off because of syphilis, who had a synthetic nose. Actually, there was a fairly good trade in synthetic noses once upon a time in the UK, exactly because of that. And the fact that resonance is in this show, which is aimed ostensibly at children, or at least a family audience, interesting.
Well, again, it feels to me like the kind of shows we would have grown up on, which were like, just because you're young doesn't mean you're weak.
Stupid. Yeah, absolutely.
You can take this.
Yeah, I mean, and there is a kind of
a lot of shows are very apologetic to children these days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's on the other hand, I mean, what you have had is a kind of renaissance, and I think Age of Resistance is kind of emblematic of that and takes certain influences from that. So you've had things like, for example, Steven Universe, which addresses issues and subjects that just never would have occurred in cartoons when we were young. And certainly wouldn't have been addressed with the complexity and sincerity that they are in that show. Things like Adventure Time, which is absolutely beautiful. The Netflix She-Ra.
Yeah, Netflix in general is doing very well for its sort of boundary-pushing animation.
I think so. And it really is going to those places that you would never have believed cartoons and children's media would ever go. I mean, you have very...
DuckTales is doing it now.
The new DuckTales.
Such a good show.
Absolutely
I haven't
brilliant.
seen much of season 3 yet, but...
I watched it, just, and I couldn't believe how good it was. Just I was actually flabbergasted that the show was as well written, as funny, as deviant as it was.
Oh, well, it had probably the most interesting, like, apart from the fact I fucking love Darkwing Duck, but it had that episode was probably the best comment on fandom as a nature, and a very positive one for one that was unforgiving about the obsessive about fandom.
Yeah, right.
It was like the fans most people are not a problem, and most people making something on some level want it to be good.
Yeah,
like never, not ever. We all expect the director to be Michael Bay these days,
right?
Which is true. I think there is some genuine, like you hear about who's directing a Marvel movie or a DC movie or something like that, and you don't. In general, there's just the assumption that they don't care about the medium,
about the franchise, about what they're doing,
and everyone on some level has something they're a fan of.
They have an investment, obviously. They want it to be as good as it can be within certain constraints. But yeah, I mean, I love DuckTales, and the original 1980s cartoon, obviously a big fan of when I was a young boy. It stands up reasonably well as 1980s cartoons go. It stands up reasonably well, but there is no comparison between it and the new one.
No, they're not on the same planet.
They're just not on the same planet. Same with She-Ra. It's the same with She-Ra. The Netflix She-Ra, and of course the reason for that is very clear. The original She-Ra was just a toy catalogue.
Yeah.
That's what it was there for. It was there to sell you plastic. It was conceived as that. It was never designed to be a medium for like proper narrative or for exploring ideas or anything like that. Whereas the new She-Ra doesn't even have a toy line. It's designed to explore concepts and ideas and world building in the same way that Age of Resistance is.
Sadly, Age of Resistance got a toy line and it wasn't very good.
Oh, really? I didn't even know it had a toy line.
Weta produced some stuff.
Oh, right. I had no idea.
You can get a little Chamberlain.
Oh, it's such a shame it's not any good. I would love a whole range of Skeksis.
I would say like it's now good for what I'm looking for.
Right.
Right, which is I like articulation and really good sculpts, and this is, hey, are you young? Do you want this to appeal to you?
Oh, that's a shame. What I would like to see, certainly for the Skeksis, is like Todd McFarlane levels of detail.
Yeah, that would be great.
That's what I'd like to see. But then again, as I said before, the Skeksis have always obsessed me anyway.
They're like the Skeksis stuck with me so much that years after I'd forgotten about them. Yeah, the toys are done by Funko, of all people.
Right,
the
okay,
toys.
yes, fair enough.
Years after I'd forgotten about them, when I was watching Farscape, and the first episode of Farscape I saw was the body swap episode.
Right.
Where the aliens are... some people are saying they're actually using the wire frames, but I think they're just based off of the Skeksis.
Right, okay.
And that's... The Skeksis had such an impression on me. I was just like, why is this so familiar?
Right. So
this is before the internet, before anything else.
Yeah.
So I had this genuine feeling of dread that wasn't really represented in the characters.
So it's like evoking an association that you can't even pin down.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But it's I don't know what it is about. I think it's because even in the original film, they are these labours of love. They really are just densely characterized, even when they're not on screen that much. You know, each and every one of those creatures is distinct, has loads of redundant detail in order to characterize them, to make them separate from one another. And in the original film, it's totally unnecessary because, of course, that most of them are not on screen much at all. And even when they are, it's in these very long, wide shots, so you can't even see the detail. But in Age of Resistance, they've taken that and gone just neck deep with it.
Oh. We haven't really talked about them much, but I really like most of the Gelfling characters in this. I think they're very, very well done. They're very engaging.
Even the ones you're supposed to hate, you know, which do exist.
They are there. But if this didn't have the Skeksis in them, in it, I can't imagine the show holding up the way it does.
No.
Because they are just so fundamental to its DNA.
Yeah, it's about them, isn't it? Ultimately, the story of the Dark Crystal is the story of the Skeksis. Yeah.
Because, spoilers, everyone we see is going to die.
Yeah, right, I mean...
all our main characters, Brienne, Bria, Beat, Hop, Celadon, all of them, they are fucking doomed.
They're all dead. They're all already dead.
The Skeksis will survive until the very last second.
Yeah. Yep, and even then they kind of survive in another state. So, you know, they are, it's their story, it's their narrative. I mean, that actually, I think, lends Age of Resistance this really wonderful layer of tragedy.
I remember when last episode finished, I was just like, wow, this is very hopeful. No.
It's not going to last. It's not going to last.
They very wisely made sure that it wasn't a 100% happy ending, because you get the Gartham and you get Deet.
Of course, and you know there's a pogrom coming. You know that, like, from this point on, it's going to be genocide, because I think in the original film there are certain references to the fact that the Garthim wiped out most of the Gelfling.
Yeah, as far as they know, until the last two show up, they had wiped out the Gelfling.
Yeah, they were
even the Podlings.
Right,
the Podlings were being. Yeah, because actually, that's something. Like, I'm very curious. Like, I want to see how they develop the narrative of only the Emperor may drink from the Gelfling.
Right. Why is that? Is that because they're so rare? Is it because is it that or? And how do they sustain it? Of course, because all of the Skeksis do need essence to survive.
But they have I suppose that's when they discovered, like, as the Gelfling started to become extinct, the Podlings are filling.
Yeah, right. But I imagine it's not as good, is it?
Well, what was it? The Gartham Master, he takes it and he gets young for a second.
Yeah, and then the wrinkles come back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that scene.
That was something that surprised me. The number of Skeksis who aren't in this.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is the thing. I thought when I was watching
once or twice,
but then disregarded. Yeah.
It's he can't get here in time.
So he's off somewhere else. Yeah, he's doing something else. He's in some other situation.
Yeah, I was looking at this because there's a few, because there's the ones at the castle and there's like other ones.
Right.
So the Gartham Master, he's not there.
Mm.
He's the one with the hook hand.
Mm.
The treasurer wasn't there.
Right, okay.
And there's because like there was originally 18 of them. There was one. She gets a lot of attention in one of the books, which I've been meaning to read. The Mariner, whose only physical representation makes her look very, very different from the regular Skeksis.
Okay.
Something here, and I'll send it over.
Interesting.
It means like what that says to me, like what's going on with them in the long term, and like where were they in the end? Because none of them made it in. A lot of them didn't make it into the next film. A lot of the characters we see in this film, in the Skeksis side of things, will not survive.
No, of course. So there will be losses for the Skeksis, one way or another. I mean, it's hard to tell what will happen to them because they are quite murderous and treacherous. They could very easily be killed by their own kind, you know.
I find that fascinating. In a state where there are 16 of you, as far as we know, because 2 died the first time you came to life.
Yeah. And
you're that terrified of death, but you're still willing to murder each other. Like, ye are supposed... Death is the ultimate horror to all of you. Yeah. But you'll still do it.
It has a resonance even beyond, I mean, as awful as it sounds, beyond normal murder, doesn't it? This is like, it's like committing the ultimate heresy, isn't it? The ultimate blasphemy, but they do it anyway. It says a lot about the Skeksis themselves, doesn't it? I mean, initially, I don't know why, I thought that...
I mean, the only reason...
Oh, sorry, go on.
I lost you there for a sec.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that when I was watching it, I was initially under the impression that the Skeksis that would become the Garthim Master was the General. You know, because of the antagonistic relationship that he has with the Chamberlain, which is very similar to the one that the Garthim Master has. But of course, we know that that's not the case.
Apparently, another word for the Garthim Master is the General.
Oh, okay.
So,
interesting.
Titles got replaced.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. But of course, I mean, I suppose he must have... Oh, hello.
The Mariner.
That's very different, isn't it? Wow. Yeah, I like her.
I really... Because she was created by the guy doing the novels at the moment. So, or at least she was finalized. Also, like, the Heretic is based off of the original concept art for the Skeksis.
Oh, okay.
Down to his face paint.
Interesting.
Because there were... I was looking back, and there were Skeksis that... like the Collector and whatnot, those characters had existed before, but very different in concept and design.
Right.
So I'd really like the Mariner to come in with that look, though.
That would be fantastic, wouldn't it? I mean, I would love to see, because she represents something a bit different for the Skeksis. She's quite beautiful, isn't she, actually? Very different, a bit more vital looking.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare her to, say, the Hunter, it'd be very interesting, the idea that the further you are away from the rest of the Skeksis and the core of what they have, which is just pure... They don't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, they sit there and they do literally nothing.
Yeah, they just indulge, don't they? They're just pure hedonism.
Yeah, what if the ones like the Mariner and the Hunter, because they stay away, they stay active?
Yeah.
What effect that has on them? And, you know, what effect does that have on them mentally? Because the Hunter was just... I mean, the shocking thing about him was that he did not mentally compare to any of them.
No, he was a totally different creature, wasn't he? To the point whereby he didn't even relate as a Skeksis. You know, he was so much apart from them. That was a brilliant concept. A beautiful, beautiful concept. And the way they'd realised him, he looks amazing.
I mean, the actual camera and puppetry in this is insane. And... all credit to the design team. I've been listening to a podcast called Trial by Stone. They do a lot of interviews and stuff, and they've had a lot of the puppeteers, and this, by the sound of it, was the most challenging major puppet production in recent memory.
So I understand, yeah. I mean, there's a fantastic documentary which is up on Netflix, and various other... There's loads of smaller documentaries around as well regarding the creation of this show. The very concept is insane. It's insane. You know, trying to do something of this level. Because, of course, they have to create the whole world. Yeah. They can't even use any, like, every tiny little thing. Yeah.
Like, there's a bit of CGI and there's a bit of live-action shots.
Of course.
But then again, that's something I loved Well, they did big panning shots of forest and stuff. Those were just like done with a drone.
Yeah.
And like, thank Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that I love about this so much, Thra is a living, breathing entity within the show. You get such a sense of what this world is and what it's about and what its natural systems are.
I think it feels real. And the fact that it's sentient as well.
Yeah.
Is a one. I thought having the tree in there was great.
I loved that, and I loved Olgra's relationship with it.
I love Olgra's relationship with everything.
Well, to be honest, for me, beyond the Skeksis, Olgra is like the living, beating heart of the show. It's funny because in most fantasy stories, she's the kind of character that I've come to hate as I've grown older. This kind of the sage character who manipulates everything from the background and sends innocents off to their deaths and whatnot. You know, the Gandalf character, the Aslan character, the Doctor character, basically. They're the characters who market themselves as being the heroes or as being the aides to the heroes, but are in fact the villains, if you look at it in any objective way. But Olgra really sidesteps that in the sense that she actually has no choice in what she does, and it's very clear at the end that she kind of knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, she says she's on the path to the conjunction. She's never said she was on the path to everything going well for everyone.
No, exactly, and certainly not on the path to saving all of the Gelfling. It's very sad. It's very sad because I love the relationship she has with everything in Thra. So
I love the idea of basically the living soul of a planet who got obsessed with other planets.
Yeah, it's so cool.
She is like, again, what little I've learned about the other figures, she is literally the physical embodiment of the planet Thra.
Yeah, she's its avatar, isn't she?
Yeah, and the way the Skeksis kept her out of the picture was by giving her a machine that let her transport her spirit to other worlds.
Yeah.
And she became obsessed with it.
And so left Thra,
of not just abandoning her duties, of abandoning a large part of her soul.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Fascinating idea.
Love it to bits. And the way this show, way more than the original film, mysticizes her.
God. Well, she's just some creepy old lady in the first one.
Really, that's pretty much it. Whereas in this one, not so much. Not so much. She's the one who sets everything in motion, isn't she?
Yes, well, it's like her driving nature of it is... I also love her driving nature of it is that her retaking her own responsibilities.
Yeah, yeah.
And having
sort
to relearn. Having to relearn how to communicate again and... Oh dear.
Yeah,
she was very good.
There's so much to love. There's just so much to love. And also, as with every tiny element of the show, just the raw characterization of her, just the motions, the movements. There's that. I had a real sort of a moment of absolute levity. You know, when she really reconnects with Thra, and she dances, and you get that wonderful moment where they all dream fast together. All of the Gelfling, the key Gelfling, realize one another. I loved that. I loved that so much. I had it's part of what makes this show so emotional. It's the fact that it has a genuine joyousness about what it's doing. And it just comes through. You feel it. The people who created this thing loved what they were doing. Yeah,
it's labor of love in the most literal sense, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, it would have had to have been, because I imagine it was also arduous.
Oh, it's again, like, watch the documentary, you just see the puppeteers standing there for hours. They must have arms like bloody bodybuilders.
Yeah, right. And the way the Skeksis were puppeteered as well, where you had like multiple different puppeteers operating them at any one time.
Amazing. And also, like, a lot of those puppeteers also have to be full-fledged on-stage actors.
Yeah.
Like, Hup's one, I heard him interviewed, and he was like, he did a whole role for Hup.
Yeah.
And then he was waiting for it to be recast. And then he was so attached to the character, he kind of weaseled his way into being the TV voice. Same with Aughra.
Brilliance.
just the level of investment and work, and like the director, he's brand new to all this kind of stuff, and people said it was amazing because he used to come up with shots no one who did puppets would ever think of.
Right, okay.
Like a panning shot around the puppets. Seems really simple, doesn't it?
Yeah, but logistically,
the logistics of the floor, everything else, avoiding getting people in shot, making them look natural, keeping the walk, stopping them looking static. It's crazy. Like, apparently, again, if you haven't listened to, I'm doing this for benefit of people who haven't listened to the backstage, but they got so frustrated trying to do the walk for the Gelfling, they basically just turned it into the best thing to do is just we walk. Yeah. Usually what they do is the puppet walk, but that doesn't work in a dramatic sense.
Right.
So they just had a natural walk, so they would just walk along the stage and have a natural bob.
Right.
But can you imagine doing that for 6, 12, 16 hours a day?
Oh my God, I can't even. No,
and like a lot of these people are on location, and some of them are brand new to the puppet industry.
Yeah.
Like
it's insane. Just from concept up, it's insane. I imagine it must have taken a lot of argumentation to get the funding for it, to get people to get people on board.
So from what I know, they'd been pushing for a sequel for a while.
Yeah.
And they were thinking, okay, we'll do it. And then the Netflix format shows up. And Netflix has so much money, their approach now is throw money at anything and see what sticks.
And see what sticks, see what works.
That's how you got something like Love, Death and Robots. Which is literally just throw the money and see what sticks.
See what happens,
My God, that is a mixed bag of a series. But they approached Netflix and they said, oh, so here's our idea. And what they did was they made a puppet of Skeksis and they had a CGI Gelfling. And they were pushing, like, okay, we'll have CGI mixed with puppetry. And then Netflix just went, could you do it with puppets?
Oh.
Could you do it all with puppets? And, well, I mean, it would be really hard and expensive. But could you do it? I mean, yes. Okay, here's money.
Yeah, go do it.
Because, like, a lot of the people who are in charge of the animation department at Netflix, of course, grew up with the Dark Crystal.
Of course.
And, like, this is it's the reason She-Ra exists. It's the reason there's at least 2 Masters of the Universe cartoons coming. It's Dragon Prince exists because the people doing Netflix loved Avatar.
Loved Avatar, yeah, of course.
Like, all this stuff is coming up because basically the nerds are in charge now.
Yeah, right, and they've got the money, basically.
And they have a near infinite supply of the damn thing.
And you know what, I think it works. You get this high invention coming through. Okay, and when you take that approach of see what sticks, you get a lot of shit. You get a lot of shit, and there's tons.
There's like anything, like 5% to 10% of what Netflix puts out is excellent.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because that's what but they're not held back by advertisers. They're not held back by TV times. They can have any episode length they want.
Yeah, and they can also have any subject matter they like, which is really interesting. I mean, it leads to high invention, and the stuff that is good is very good.
Yes,
very good indeed. As long as shows like Age of Resistance keep coming, they can make as much shit as they like.
Yep,
as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely, I think if this is what comes out when they're just throwing everything at the wall, continue throwing.
Continue throwing, yeah. Do not become more codified. Just keep throwing shit at the wall and see what happens. I can't believe as well that they managed to get into Age of Resistance, whether it was intentional or not, but a kind of fantasy metaphor for very pertinent socio-cultural situations as well. I mean, what do you have in Age of Resistance? You have this corrupt ruling class that has kind of duped a kind of middle class into believing that it's free and that they are wonderful and they're giving them everything, and that middle class not listening to their children who are saying, no, hang on, they're killing us. It's not exactly. It doesn't require that much in the way of exegesis to draw real-world comparisons. Let's put it that way.
Is Geet Greta Thunberg?
Maybe. And even if she isn't, it's an astounding coincidence. It works very well. That reading works very, very well. The fact that you can apply a kind of Marxist reading to Dark Crystal Age of Resistance is fairly astounding to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But it is there, isn't it? I mean, it is there. I'm not sort of like contriving this. I'm not seeing what I want to see.
This is so, not to go off on a rant because I don't think it's appropriate really, but Star Trek Picard was noted for pushing a certain political viewpoint.
Okay, fair enough.
And commenting on modern politics and everything else at the detriment of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Because it stopped being Star Trek. It started being just generic sci-fi at number 452.
Yeah. Right.
Like what was it? Someone said, "Oh well, if we had Star Trek represented like it was before, it would be a fantasy world."
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, "That's a point."
That's kind of the point. Yeah.
That's why we have Deep Space Nine to comment on the fantasy world from inside. But there, Dark Crystal is very much made with an awareness of those social political issues, but no one talks about it. I notice because of how they approached it. And I, as much as I think it's very, very, very important we talk about these issues, I always said the reason sci-fi is such a good medium, and sci-fi and fantasy are such good mediums for pushing comments on how you treat LGBTQ people, how we handle politics, how much power we should give to ruling classes, how much power we should give to the lower classes, where are we going, what's going on with transhumanism, etc., 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 is because it infects itself into the human brain without you realizing it.
Yeah, right. That's exactly it.
When you absorb these things, they come to you after, and sometimes you don't even realize where those thoughts came from.
Yeah.
Whereas with a lot of the, I would say a lot of the, from what I would call the shitty sci-fis of the last 5 years that are about as subtle as the brick to the testicles.
Yep.
All they do is present, this is what you should be. Yeah. And automatically half your audience is throwing up their arms going, oh, no, I don't agree with this.
So they become didactic, don't they? They're kind of finger wagging, and they're telling you, rather than providing a kind of arena or a framework in which you can work with ideas, you can think about things, you can consider, which is what the Dark Crystal does. It is not at any point finger wagging at the audience. You never have any point where a character turns around to the audience essentially and says, this is what is happening and this is what it means. It allows you to come to that, as you say, later with consideration. And that's a much more natural way of changing someone's mind, or of leading them to think about things maybe they wouldn't have thought about before. It's very clever, it's very subtle, and that's how you do it.
Yeah, I always found that more effective.
Yeah, well, it is. It's how we learn. I mean, it's how we learn. We learn indirectly. And when we learn indirectly, we learn more sincerely. So,
Yes, absolutely, which is kind of the problem with most communication these days.
Absolutely, because it's so direct and lacks nuance, yeah?
I'm right, you're wrong. Why are you right, am I wrong? Because you're the other side.
I mean, as a sort of aside, which I won't rant about too much, literalism is a poison in our cultures. Literalism is an absolute poison. So it's very difficult to have conversations which include things like implication and inference, or analogy, or the more poetic forms of expression, because people want absolute and simple statements, mechanical statements. But the thing is, reality doesn't work that way. Reality itself, human experience itself, is not that clear cut. So there's no reason why language should work that way either.
Absolutely.
I have real issues with literalism. I think it's a poison. I think it's an absolute poison to our discourses and to culture in general. And it's why I'm very happy something like Dark Crystal Age of Resistance exists, because it manages to broach a dialogue indirectly through metaphor.
We said something simple like Deeth's parents. How they handle those is exactly how you normalize something like that effectively. Because it includes them. It doesn't. Obviously, I'm approaching this from being a very white, very heterosexual man, which is obviously a rather limited perspective on some things. I'm also Irish. I'm literally genetically the most white man you've ever met.
You are the whitest of the white, technically, aren't you?
98%. 98% this area, like where I'm sitting in.
Right.
You want to know what's weird? You want to know what the other 2% are?
What was the other 2%?
1% Middle East, 1% Nigerian.
Okay. Just to throw in.
No English, no European, no French. One Nigerian man and one Middle Eastern man at some point in my genetic history.
Brilliant.
Wandered onto Irish shores and said, like, Aria.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
So I'm always aware of that when I'm commenting on things like this, on how you portray LGBTQ characters in fiction, because obviously my perspective is biased.
Yeah.
But I think that it's so effective when they're just there.
Yeah.
They're normal, they're there, and there's no moment where the camera sort of rotates and goes like, they're gay.
Yeah, right.
And it's like what I'm liking about animation at the moment is that they are putting in a lot of gay, lesbian, transgender, whatever characters in there, and no one gives a shit.
No one gives a shit. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, it's again referring back to Steven Universe. You know, you have that wonderful sort of metaphor for trans people, transhumanism, but also for, in a weird way, it's kind of it's for physical intimacy as well, where you have the I don't know what it's called, the fusions, where the two characters can fuse together and become another character, another creature, and it's often those fusions. If say there's like a male fusion and a female fusion, the result is neither. It's almost, it could be androgynous, it could be intersex, it could be any number of things, but it's not commented upon. There's no specific attention drawn to that fact. It just is. It just is, you know? It's very clever. It's very clever. It's a very subtle way of breaking down assumed boundaries and assumed traditions, but just by disregarding them.
Very much so.
I like it a lot, and it's something that seems to be happening in children's media a lot, like a lot at the moment.
Yeah, well, like I think we're going through a bit of a renaissance again.
I think so.
Where where what defines a children's media is no longer as simplistic as it was for the early 2000s.
No,
or mid-2000s.
You're right. Yeah, something is definitely happening out there. I find that a lot of children's media is dealing with this stuff in a much more complex and a much more adult way than most fiction that is ostensibly aimed at adults.
Oh, God. Yeah. Adult fiction stopped being mature a long time ago.
Certainly did.
And I blame Game of Thrones in a lot of ways, if I'm completely honest. I also hate Game of Thrones now, so...
I blame... A lot of the time I tend to blame the MCU.
Yes, that is... There's two very different extremes in media right now that everyone's trying to be.
Yeah.
Like, they are either the softest, jokiest, gaggiest thing in the world, or, hey, look at all the rape and incest.
Yeah, right. It's one thing or the other.
That's good television, isn't it? That's wonderful television. I want to see someone be raped in a 5-minute long scene.
It's one thing or the other, yeah?
Maybe people could have a cup of tea first.
But
maybe
even there, I mean, the saturation of the MCU, which has basically dominated cinema certainly in the Anglophonic world for the last decade, if not longer. That is now you are now getting tonics to that. As like genuine reactions to it. So you look at things like, for example, the Joker. The Joker film, which came out recently. That is it's not just a tonic, it's an assault on the MCU. God, yeah. It's an assault on the MCU. It basically takes one of the moments I hate the most from the MCU, which is the capitalist Jesus moment from Endgame. It's Tony Stark clicking his fingers and then...
Oh, yeah.
Fuck off. Honestly. Fuck off.
I mean, I've never really got past Professor Hulk, but...
Yeah, right. But it takes that, and then it turns that character into a villain.
Yeah.
It basically says, no, you're not the solution. You are the problem. Even when you're trying to be the solution, even when you think you are being the solution, you are the problem. And it does that in Thomas Wayne. The way it portrays Thomas Wayne and the way it breaks down the saintly myth of Thomas Wayne is genius. It's genius, and it's a sincere assault on the positioning of Tony Stark in the MCU. You know, this is a man who once boasted that he'd privatized national defense. It's like, no, he's not a hero. This guy is a bad guy. Yeah? This guy is a bad guy in many, 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 many ways. It's just he is framed in such a manner that you are led to believe that he's labeled as a hero. You're told that he's a good guy, therefore he's a good guy, yeah?
Yeah.
That's the way it works. It's
the Thanos conversation from after Infinity War.
Yeah, right.
Like, who is really the villain?
Mm-hmm. And also, I mean, oh god, I mean, I'm sick to death of having the conversation with people about Thanos, the Malthusian motivation that they give Thanos in those films is awful. It's awful. Malthusianism has been bullshit since it was actually coined, you know. It's bullshit. It has been discredited a million times over. And it's lazy. It's lazy. You get so many lazy Malthusian villains in popular fiction and media these days because people think that somehow it lends them some credibility, that it lends them... Hence you get the whole sort of Thanos did nothing wrong like thing,
yeah,
going on
the
internet.
It's a weird thing for me that's an argument. Like, you want to legitimize a villain.
Yeah,
there are other ways to do it. Like, I like Thanos' portrayal, not necessarily for what he's trying to do, but for how Brolin plays him.
Yeah,
I think he plays him as a guy who doesn't really believe he's doing anything wrong,
right,
which is a really good thing. It's not necessarily what he's doing that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, he's taking his daughters he's taking his daughters apart on a cellular level, but he thinks they love him.
Yeah.
And he's like, why don't, I'm just trying to reach out, I'm just trying to have some food with you. I'm just trying to have a nice dinner. And it's like, you're hanging my sister from the ceiling in bits. Yeah, but I'm just trying to have a nice dinner.
Right.
But, or the simple idea that a bad person can love someone.
Yeah.
Which
is
fiction,
fair enough,
Yeah, fiction ignores that.
Generally speaking, certainly superhero fiction
but
does.
Having the idea of, by wiping out people, it's for the betterment of mankind. It's just like, it's not the most complicated idea in the world.
It's such a bad idea. It's such a bad motivation for the character. I found that a roadblock in those two films. Every time it came up, I was like, that is stupid. That's stupid. I mean, Thanos is supposed to be this incredible extra-dimensional, almost godly entity, right? He has been alive for a very long time. He's been from world to world to world. He's absorbed so many cultures, so many ideas, and never once has anyone said to him, hang on, this doesn't work. This is a bad idea. Mathematically, it's a bad idea. For one thing...
I produced a graph here, Thanos. If you can just have a look at this, you'll really understand that fundamentally this doesn't work.
It fundamentally doesn't work. Not only that, but if you do it once in like X amount of billions of years, you're gonna have to do it again, aren't you?
Like, I've halved all life and all resources in the universe. Yeah, yeah. So then the problem is exactly what it was before.
Exactly, it's exactly the same.
You've wiped out half of all life, including everything that was people just sort of live off life.
Right, and not only that...
it's not like there's more life now and less people.
You've wiped out the people who are the creators of resources, you fucking idiot. You know?
It's the same thing. Why didn't you just double resources?
And in and of itself, exactly. This is it. This is it. When you introduce the notion of the Infinity Gauntlet, that's when it goes over the edge into supreme stupidity. Supreme stupidity. Because with the Infinity Gauntlet and the Infinity Stones, he's God. He's God. He can recreate the laws of physics. Yeah? So why doesn't he just click his fingers and make it so that living creatures are not dependent on finite resources?
Yeah. No one needs to eat.
Exactly. No one needs to eat. Or on the other hand, why not click your fingers and just make it so that all resources in the universe are infinitely self-replenishing? There. Done. Yeah. You don't have to kill half of reality. Yeah? It's so... I just can't get past it. I cannot get past it. And every time it came up, I was sort of like...
I've been like that with the MCU anyway for a very long time. So.
I must admit, I'm not the. To be fair, to be 100% fair, I'm not the audience.
I was the audience.
Yeah. Oh, you were the audience. I'm really not. I'm really not.
Basically, for me, it peaked at Avengers.
Yeah.
And then it went downhill, and there's been halfway fun movies, but I can never rewatch them, and I hate the really, really popular ones are the ones I hate the most.
Me too. There
Ragnarok can burn in a fire. I hate them. That movie took one of the best Hulk stories and played it as a joke.
Yeah.
Because they made a licensing error and they can't give Hulk his own movie.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, apparently they might have gotten
is?
the right back to him, but they couldn't do a solo movie for him.
Ooh,
I think it was Paramount who had them.
God almighty.
But that doesn't excuse Professor Hulk.
No, not much does.
I hate Professor Hulk. I hate Professor Hulk in the comics.
So in the movie, it's just right out, yeah.
Yeah, because like
out.
He murdered the Hulk.
The
Hulk is dead, and Bruce Banner is living in his body.
Yeah, I love it.
Because it's Banner. He said, "Oh, I've got the strength of the Hulk." What happened to the Hulk?
Yeah, what actually did happen to the personality of the Hulk? Yeah, interesting.
The personalities of the Hulk.
Like
it's not like they went through a therapy session and remerged.
Yeah. But no,
by the way, read Immortal Hulk. Anyone who's not reading Immortal Hulk, holy crap!
And the worst of it is, it's not as though interesting stories cannot be told in these universes. Interesting, wonderful, morally ambiguous stories can be told in these universes.
Well, the very original idea of the Infinity Gauntlet was, what will a man do for love?
Right. I mean, you know what? I know that they couldn't do that in the MCU. I know
they could. They used to be. It's been years since that's been a valid argument.
Yeah,
in any.
Fair enough.
They could do whatever they fucking like because they changed the rule book.
That's right. Yeah, but I mean, even given that maybe there was something keeping them from doing that particular story, i.e., that Thanos is in love with death, like some abstraction of death. They didn't need to do it this way. They didn't need to do the whole Malthusian thing, which is it smacks of laziness. It smacks of laziness, and it just doesn't work. Because the moment you apply any kind of pressure or criticism, you see the gaps. You see the issues with it. And it's just like, oh, no. But my hope is, now that that's out of the way, that maybe they can start telling some interesting self-contained stories using these characters. Hopefully. Maybe.
Bye-bye.
Anywho.
Oddly enough, DC might be the only refuge there, but we'll wait and see.
It might be.
Although they're talking about Flash maybe being rebooted again.
Okay.
After Ezra Miller strangled someone in a pub.
Okay. Interesting.
This is what happens when you just randomly Google your favorite comic character.
Right. This is what happens.
I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to see if there's a new book coming out. That's what I was like, is there a new book coming out? That's all I wanted to know. Oh,
brilliant.
Ezra Miller's attacking a fan.
Alright, fair enough. But yes, I mean, Age of Resistance is like... Yeah, getting back to the core subject.
It's a good TV show.
Those of you who've seen it know. You know the amount of work that's gone into this thing. You know how sincere it is. What a work of art it is. And I can go back to it again and again and again, and have done. There are not many TV shows I can do that with. Hannibal is one of them. This is one of the only others. And every time I turn it on, it's like, no, I'm watching the whole thing. I can't watch bits and pieces. I'm going to watch the whole thing.
It's not it is basically an extended movie more than the vast majority of TV shows.
Oh my god, yeah, it's very non-episodic, isn't it? I mean, that's the thing. If you're in it for the long term. You're going to watch the whole thing because it doesn't make sense otherwise. You need to see it all. But I mean, they are going forward, aren't they? The next season is in production by all accounts.
Yes, it got announced worryingly late. I remember that there was a lot of this is taking a long time to announce because. But thinking about it, it makes sense because they can't just say, oh, okay, we're greenlighting this show.
Yeah.
This is one of the most expensive productions we've ever done. This has a huge number of what can we reuse, what can we not reuse, what's the financial thing going forward, how much money did we make off this, how much money will we make off this.
Yeah.
You need a lot more in place than just, hey, this show got a good rating on episode 1.
Yeah, absolutely true.
Before you can say, here's season 2.
But from what I understand, it is going ahead.
Yes, I think it got announced there a month or two ago.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there are wider contextual issues in the world at the moment that may push that back a little further. But even so, it's brilliant to know that we're going to get a continuation of this story. And my sincere hope is that it doesn't fall prey to its own success, which a lot of TV shows do, i.e. that it just keeps going on and then just ends badly.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm hoping not, because it's not really structured for it.
No.
It's structured with a beginning, like, it's structured for a 3-act.
Yeah.
A 3-act run. It's structured for 3 seasons. Mm-hmm. And I really hope they have the sense to do that.
Yeah. No Walking Dead syndrome, please.
Yeah. Like, so many shows just... I've said this for a while now. The ending of a show can destroy rewatching potential of a good... Like,
you can't it just? Can't it just?
You can love a show up until the last episode, to the middle episode, to the last season. And if you do not get the ending right...
Mm-hmm. It kills the joy of the show. It can kill the joy of the show.
If some shows, if people ask me, will I rewatch it from the start? I'm just like, honestly, I can't recommend you revisit this, because there's very, very good bits to this. Mm-hmm. But you will be angry by the time it ends.
Yeah, Lost. I call it the Lost syndrome.
Mm.
I was so invested in that show. I gave myself to that show. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I did give them the benefit of the doubt, and oh my god. Was that a mistake?
I was really annoyed when it turned out the monster was a cloud.
Right.
Why wasn't it a monster?
Why wasn't it a monster? Yeah.
They were building it to be a monster, because J.J. Abrams thinks he's smarter than everyone else. Mm-hmm. As demonstrated by every movie J.J. Abrams has ever done.
Mm-hmm. I was not a fan about that. And of course, it's one of those rare instances where it doesn't just destroy the rest of the show. It actually, it throws this incredible negative shade over everything that's come before. You realize that everything that felt like it was controlled and that had intention doesn't. It's just random. They are just throwing shit at you, which I hate.
Yes, absolutely.
I absolutely hate.
And didn't he come out at one point and say that the show never had a planned end?
Oh, it took a while. It was after it finished airing.
Yeah.
Because up until the point of the last episode, they were every time they were interviewed, it was like, no, we know what's going to happen. No, we've had ideas since day one. We know where we're going. We know what the island is. We know what the numbers mean. We know what the smoke monster is. Bullshit. Absolute, total wankery. As it turned out to be. But no, I mean, with Age of Resistance, at the very least, we've already had the ending.
Yeah. What I would see is the structure would be season 2 is the Gelfling on a high, they've won, and then it's the introduction of the Gartham, it's the degradation, and it ends in them in a position where they're suddenly... We're in a war.
Yeah, we're at war, yeah.
And season 3 is how they lose that war.
It's season 3 should technically be the most tragic of all of them.
Season 3 should have every character you like murdered.
Yeah. Yeah, it should.
On screen.
I mean, it's awful, but that's what we know is coming.
Yeah.
That's what we know is coming. Of course, I imagine what we'll learn as well is who are the parents of Jen and the other one.
Yeah, I really hope it's not Rhiannon Dean.
It might be.
Really, it's not.
Jen looks really like Rhiannon. He looks really like Rhiannon.
Yeah, he does.
Like really like Rhiannon.
Yeah, I kind of course. Oh God. Oh no, I've just going back to the whole Game of Thrones things. What if it turns out, they were brother and sister the whole time?
Oh no.
Rhiannon Keith had a son and a daughter. And years later, inbreeding.
No. No, I don't know, but I get the impression.
What if Han Solo had never come in the picture?
Yeah, that would have gone terribly wrong, wouldn't it? That would have gone terribly wrong. You would have had to have had Ben Kenobi coming in as a ghost at one point and saying, Luke, you really shouldn't do that.
Really? Young Skywalker, I must have a talk.
Yes, there are things I have kept from you.
Really should have told you this.
In fact, it may be my dementia. It may be my sand dementia. I've forgotten so much out there in the desert.
Should have told you this about exactly 1 hour ago. A bit late now, I suppose, but There she is.
Yep.
So congratulations.
Oh no.
At least you'll be able to remember each other's birthday.
Oh no. No, that's terrible. It's brilliant, but it's terrible. No, I don't think that'll be the case. I think we'll find out who the parents of the main Gelflings are, the savior Gelflings. I mean, we know what is her name? Kira? Is it Kira or something like that?
Which one?
The female Gelfling from the film. I can't never remember what her name is.
And well, God, I'm gonna have to check now. Because it's gonna annoy me. Because I remember everyone, I remember the characters from the series so much better.
I remember Jen. I remember Jen and the other one.
And Kira, yeah.
Kira.
Fizzgig. I remember Fizzgig.
Yeah, absolutely. But Kira is obviously descended from the Groton, isn't she? So you can kind of determine who her parents might be from that. I mean, Deet might be her mother. Which
would be kind of cool if it turned out Kira had dark hell powers.
Yeah, I mean, I loved that, didn't you?
I loved it, but I hated it at the same time. I was just like, no!
Of all the characters that could have that happen to them, I mean, Deet has this real innocence about her, doesn't she? And to have, like, the very essence of corruption and darkness infest her, it's like, oh no.
Have her be the one who kills.
Right. And the way it ends with her, when she retreats into that warren that's all corrupting around her. It's like, oh no!
Well, again, it's the realization when you think about it, none of what the Skeksis do that we know about should have led to Thrall looking the way it does in the movie.
Right. Oh, now that's an interesting point.
So
that's interesting. So what does become of her?
I don't know. Is that a question?
The Darkling Deet, what becomes of her? Ooh.
I like the little sinister image of her sitting on a throne, which is unintentionally hilarious because the throne is way too big for her.
Way too big, yeah.
But it's just like, you're adorable.
Yeah. Adorable dark despot.
I'll kill you all. Oh, yes, you will.
Brilliant.
I actually like to, because I'm sure there's official stats for this or something like that, but I like to imagine the Gelflings are the same size as us.
Oh, now that's interesting. So the Skeksis are actually massive.
Yeah, that's what I always
like gigantic. Yeah.
Like, I'm sure someone's gone out and said that Gelflings are 1.5 feet tall, but for me it makes more sense.
Yeah, for them to be sort of standard human size, as opposed to hobbits is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea, and it really does emphasise the Skeksis again, doesn't it? It makes them seem like big and imposing and powerful.
Yeah,
which they should be.
Yes. But I do love the idea of full body puppets.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Like, and Jim Henson has such an amazing way of doing it.
Oh, God, I mean, that studio when it comes to puppetry, there's nothing like them, is there? There's nothing like them. I mean, I always remember stuff like The Storyteller from when I was a kid. Do you remember that?
Yes, God.
Oh my God, I loved that show so much, so much. Again, the puppetry is amazing, absolutely incredible. I remember there is a puppet in that show which is very like the Skeksis. It's a griffin. It's like a griffin, and it's massive. It's not like human scale. It is actually the scale of what a griffin would be. It's huge, and interacting with human players, so human characters. And it's so expressive. It's so real looking. It looks great. I cannot.
Wow. Oh no, I've seen pictures. I've seen pictures of this one before, because I don't remember Storyteller very well. I've seen pictures of it. I always assumed it was a dragon.
It's in an episode called The Luck Child. It's very, very good. In fact, that whole show is amazing.
I love the look of that.
Yeah, he's a beautiful puppet, and he's got that. You know how the Skeksis have all of these motorized components in their face that makes them expressive, so they can curl their lips, and they can sort of get crow's feet around their eyes and that kind of thing. Yeah. The Griffin is the same. It's got these motorized components that allow it to blink and allow its nose to sort of ruffle up and whatnot. Very cool. Very cool indeed. It allows them to
perform. For the time as well.
Right. Because this was the Storyteller would have been around the same time as the Dark Crystal, so...
Yeah, or maybe...
sort of mid-1980s? Yeah,
Storyteller.
mid to late 1980s.
1988.
Yeah, that would have been about right.
Yeah. Also, like, just looking at their filmography, Jim Henson has been way more active than I would have presumed they would have been in the modern era, you know?
Yeah, doing like practical effects and things like that. Well, there is an appetite for them now, isn't there? There is this kind of call for more practical effects and less. I mean, I'm not entirely opposed to CGI or anything like that. When it's done well and when it's used well, it's glorious. It's beautiful, you know.
It's just when it's the fallback.
Yeah, it's when it's just used because that's what's there, basically. Well, that's what's expected.
What's the story from The Mandalorian? Werner, or whatever his name was.
Werner Herzog.
Yeah, Werner Herzog. He was playing against the child, and he loved it. Apparently, he got really into working with the puppet. He was like super into it.
I just love it.
And then they took the puppet out and they said, "Okay, we're going to redo the scene." And I said, "Why are we redoing the scene?" I said, "Well, we're going to do it like with a stand-in, so we can CGI it in later on if we don't like the puppet." He called them cowards and told them to put the puppet back.
I mean, do you know about Werner Herzog?
Did he? A little bit, not a lot. He did some documentary that was outrageous. Was he the one behind the Bear documentary?
He held his crew and cast up at gunpoint to finish filming a film at one point. The man is mad. Like, sincerely mad, but also brilliant. You know, he's genuinely brilliant. When I saw he was in The Mandalorian, I was like, oh, well, that's it. Trump is president, and Werner Herzog is in a Star Wars spin-off show. I don't know what to do with that information. My brain can't process that, and it refuses to.
I just love the idea of them going. I love the idea of them taking away this thing. Okay, we're going to do it. We're going to do it, and everyone's going to accept it. It's just like, put it back, you coward.
It back, right?
It's the fact he called them cowards, and he said this himself. And if he says it, I believe it.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's them getting off lightly if they upset him. From what I understand, he's a fiery character. Some say a slightly deranged character.
Well, you need them, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, Mikey, I am going to have to bounce very soon because I'm really hungry. I'm really hungry.
I have to take care of the car.
Do you have any closing thoughts or statements on the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance?
It is an amazing experience. I highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it. I highly recommend it to people who have seen it. I want to see more things like this. I am in love with practical effects. I will defend the first Hellboy movie, and I will definitely defend the second Hellboy movie almost entirely on their visuals.
Oh my God, yes.
And Ron Perlman, but
and Doug Jones for that matter.
He's good. He's good at what he does, and I think he's kind of the only guy who regularly does it anymore.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah, it's like it's his milieu. That's what he does. He gets slathered in latex, so no one knows what he looks like.
But yeah, and I really would like to see the Mariner in the next season.
Oh yeah.
In her pirate hat.
Likewise. I mean, yeah, I echo everything Mikey says. It is one of the best TV shows I've ever seen. It just is. It sings to me, this show. It sings to me on such a beautiful level. And I hope it does for all of you as well. Is there anything you'd like to pimp out, by the way, Mikey?
Oh, as usual, I'm doing the Moonbase 2, which this will probably go up there as well. Because why not? We do some comic shows as well, which are becoming because of the COVID-19 are going to be a bit more generalized. So we're going to be doing some just weird comics we like.
Okay.
So you can check that out at moonbase2 at libsyn.com, and Twitter is Irish Paleo, and I tend to wander around trying to find people to talk to about things. I don't really care what it is. We'll do podcasts for food, that kind of thing.
Okay, links below, ladies and gentlemen, to all of this, by the way. Links below. As for me, you all know it's the usual. You can find my short fiction over at strangeplaygrounds.com and on Amazon. Evil Empire, I know, but that's the way it is, I'm afraid. Born in Blood Volume 1 came out last year, and Born in Blood Volume 2 is due out reasonably soon, COVID allowing. And you can also find me knocking about here on the Exaggerated Elegy channel, and if you want to chat, you can find me over at Enigmatic Elegy. That being said, thanks so much, Mikey. Thank you for coming on. Yep. It's been a blast. I know we've been trying to get this together for months.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a little while, but thank you so much, man.
Yep.
And thank you guys for listening. Until next time, bye-bye.
Adios.